What's up, players? Welcome to my channel. Path of Exile 2. It is a work that ARPG enthusiasts have been looking forward to in recent years. Its graphics are exquisite, while the gameplay has also undergone major changes. More importantly, its development team, GGG, has been continuously updating Path of Exile 1, proving to everyone that they are the most dynamic and capable ARPG development team today. Today, we'll look at the information that has already been released, skipping the unimportant parts. First, let's take a look at some basic Path of Exile 2 details. Its first large-scale public test will be in mid-November. All players can buy a $30 sponsorship package on the international server's official website, guaranteeing a slot for the early access. As expected in the public test version of the game, most content is available and complete, but most of the experience and processes have been compressed somewhat. We will be able to battle and trade with other players and use premium skins, but only half of the total chapters will be released in the test. The total number of professions and endgame maps available will also be fewer than the final official version. Worth mentioning is that if you are a past player of Path of Exile 1 and have purchased skins or stash tabs, they will be mapped and transferred accordingly to Path of Exile 2, as long as Path of Exile 2 is able to support the relevant cosmetics, further showcasing the care the developers show to the player base. As a game with a relatively dark theme and as an ARPG, the most important gameplay loop is fighting monsters, building characters, and further progressing late-game developments. Combat in Path of Exile 2 is more intense and action-oriented, incorporating mechanics from other classic action games such as dodge rolling, which is used to avoid damage at critical moments. Boss monsters also have a stagger meter that, when filled, interrupt their current action, forcing them into a long recovery state that gives you the opportunity to set up and deal massive damage. Other ailments which are traditionally used as control utilities such as freeze follow a similar stagger bar mechanic. Unlike its predecessor, bosses are no longer naturally granted immunity to ailments such as freezing, and can be frozen if their resistance to the ailment is eventually overcome with constant attempts by the player to inflict it. Character movement in Path of Exile 2 is more precise, and we can use skills to attack while moving. WASD is used to move, while the mouse is used to aim and shoot. The control scheme is now also modified to be more suitable for gamepads, and it should be possible to play the game using controllers. Boss fights in the demonstration videos released represent GGG's expectations for the combat experience in Path of Exile 2. A checkpoint is automatically granted before entering the boss fight, while dying in battle will revive the player at the boss entrance. However, unlike in the original game, the boss will also fully recover their health, and the battle is reset, meaning we must defeat the boss in a single try. Players will often find they have difficulty regenerating resources during boss fights and must prioritize dodging and respecting boss mechanics. In short, the combat system of Path of Exile 2 is more directed to traditional action games, with increased movement controls and actions while moving, such as rolling away from attacks, becoming a core feature. Rolling does not make a character invincible during the animation, meaning it must also be timed to be effective. The second difference in POE2 is in the character building. Normally, we need to decide what kind of characters and talents to choose, and what kind of skills we use to fight. Firstly, the number of characters in Path of Exile 2 has doubled. During testing, we can choose one of the 8 characters, and 4 more will be added in the official version, making a total of 12. This doesn't include the fact that each character class will also have its own ascendancies, which are naturally unlocked as the main storyline is progressed, as opposed to the labyrinth and trials that were a staple of the previous entry. The character classes are also unique, with the default weapon for a huntress being a spear, while the mercenary uses a crossbow, launching attacks via grenades if using their heavy attack. The druid is also able to use basic elemental spells or transform to deal damage. The passive skill tree has also been revamped, with all classes starting from the center but facing a different direction. New players are often intimidated by the skill tree at the start, but with a lot of references and builds that will be made available by experienced players, it should not pose an obstacle. As new players get more experience, they'll also notice it is not as complicated as it looks. In short, there's no need to worry too much about the passive tree, even if you are new to the entry. New in this entry are also uncut gems, indicating the availability of new skills in the gem interface. This increases the availability of gems, and gems from other classes are not limited, lowering the initial barrier to entry some classes might face due to lack of efficient skills at the start of the game. An interesting change is the summoning mechanic in Path of Exile 2. As an example, Summon Raging Spirit no longer requires you to hold the cast spell down to continuously summon them. While trigger gems still exist, You instead reserve Spirit, a new resource, to summon them. Minions that are permanent reserve some amount of Spirit and are automatically resummoned on death. Auras also share this same resource, as do meta gems, which are the new version of trigger gems. As per normal, passive support gems still exist, and we can link them to main skills. Since skill gems are no longer socketed in equipment, progression of skill gems end with the progression of the game. Path of Exile 2 has added a lot of new things, whether it's mercenaries or druids. They all look very interesting. The skills are also very different from before, considering the significant changes in combat. From these changes, the stats in Path of Exile 2 should be significantly compressed. Gameplay becomes more important since support gems no longer have a universal damage bonus. I guess the original intention of these designs is to give us more reasons to choose different support gems instead of simply looking at which one has higher damage. Lastly, late-game development. The biggest difference between Path of Exile 1 and similar games is requiring a very deep level of understanding of the game close to the end. Will Path of Exile 2 inherit this depth? I think the answer is yes, but it definitely won't be the version from the beta test. According to the currently disclosed information, the development depth of Path of Exile 2 is relatively limited. I think you might be as curious as I am. What is the endgame of Path of Exile 2 like? But unfortunately, there is no news. Maybe GGG is also unsure about how the endgame will be better for now. After all, Path of Exile 2 is an ARPG. Its gameplay has become closer to action games. It's a huge change that can revolutionize the entire game. The action games we usually see, whether it's Souls-like games or Metroidvania, they usually don't have very high stat growth, but because of the exponential growth in Path of Exile, it still makes any action design look like a joke. That's right, the Path of Exile 1 indeed has exponential growth in stats and damage. Many players who like the first generation have also expressed concerns about this. Will Path of Exile 2 no longer be fun to grind due to the introduction of dodging mechanics? We still don't know, but I am optimistic about it. Because for any type of game, any change is better than stagnation. Thank you so much for watching till this point. How will this turn out? Let's wait and see. That's it for this video. Don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe.